In June 2026, the US government released 72 new UFO files in a single afternoon. One of them, a short FBI witness interview called UAPD-009, came out with entire lines blacked out. Not because it was denied, because it was approved for release, with parts deliberately removed. That distinction is the whole story. The US government is now handing the public more pages on unidentified aerial phenomena faster than at any point in its history, and it is still drawing lines nobody has fully explained to the public in plain language. So the real question was never, what are they hiding? The real question is, what's the actual rule that decides what gets blacked out, who that rule is protecting, and what happens when that same rule runs headfirst into a case the government itself admits it can't close? On February 4, 2026, an FBI agent sat down with a witness somewhere in the northeastern United States and opened a standard form, the FD-302, the exact same form the Bureau uses to write up a bank robbery confession or a wiretap intercept. This one wasn't about a crime. It was about a light in the sky. 4 months later, that interview became public record under a single case number, FBI UAPD-09. And when it hit the internet, entire sections of it were simply gone. Not lost, not stamped top secret. Redacted on purpose, line by line, by a person who sat there and decided exactly what you were allowed to read and what you weren't. Here's where it gets strange. This file sits inside the single largest release of government UFO documents in American history. They didn't have to release it at all. They chose to, and then they edited it anyway. So the real question isn't whether the FBI is hiding something from you. It's why an agency that just handed you 72 UFO files in one release still decided that some of the words in file number 9 weren't meant for your eyes. Before we go any further, hold on to one number, 294. That's how many UAP files are now sitting in the public record, released in just over a month. Keep that number close, because by the end of this, you're going to realize file D009 was never really about one redacted paragraph. It's about what that number is quietly training all of us to stop asking. Here's the working theory, and I want to be upfront that it is a theory, not a confirmed fact. Redaction in a UAP file usually has nothing to do with the phenomenon itself. It's about the witness. Names, home addresses, exact coordinates, employers. The government has stated, in writing, that these releases are cropped and edited specifically to protect the identities of the people who came forward, not to bury a secret about what they actually saw. If that's true, then the black bars in D009 aren't hiding a saucer. They're hiding somebody's front yard, their last name, maybe their job. That's the calm, boring, entirely plausible explanation, but it doesn't fully account for everything sitting right next to D009 in the same release, and that's where this stops being simple. Here's the detail that shouldn't exist if this is only routine privacy redaction. FBI UAP D009 is not a standalone report. It's the 9th document inside an 11-file cluster the FBI investigated over nearly 4 straight years, from 2021 to 2026, every incident originating within 25 miles of the others, in one sparsely populated pocket of the northeastern United States. 4 separate video sightings, multiple witness interviews, a formal site survey, and buried in that same case file is one document the Bureau didn't need a single civilian witness for at all, an FD-1057, in which 2 of its own special agents reported witnessing the phenomenon themselves, firsthand, during an active investigation, in November 2024. Federal law enforcement agents, not hobbyists, not late-night callers with shaky video, trained agents, on the record in an official government file describing something they personally watched while working the case. Wait. If the Bureau's own people are the witnesses and part of this cluster, then we're just protecting civilian privacy. Can't be the entire reason the redaction pen came out on D009. Something else is being managed here too, and nobody has said what. Let's lay the timeline out properly, because the pattern only becomes visible once you see the whole sequence. November 2021, a witness records a single point of light that resolves into multiple lights, rotating erratically, filed as PR001, nicknamed Triangle Orbs. March 2022, a second witness films 2 red lights, the lower one rotating slowly around the upper, PR002. October 2024, a third video, described as a plasma-like sphere, hovers above a pond for nearly 45 minutes, changing shape, splitting into smaller points of light, authenticated by the government, edited only to protect privacy. That same month and the one after, the FBI runs a formal site survey of the area, and it's during this exact window that two of its own agents report seeing the phenomenon directly, on the record. Then, in July 2025, two more civilian witnesses, a couple arriving home from work, watched two identical red spheres with glowing white centers hover silently in their own backyard, then appear to merge into one, and they capture it on an iPhone. The Bureau's own assessment of these witnesses: credible. Not unreliable. Not probable misidentification. Credible. And 7 months after that, in February 2026, comes the interview that becomes UAPD-009, the document that formally ties this entire 4-year cluster together in a single case file, logged as FD-302 number 67. It isn't an isolated report that happened to get redacted. It's the connective document that links everything that came before it. Now let's separate fact from speculation, because that line is the entire point of doing this seriously instead of sensationally. Fact. FBI UAPD-009 exists, was released on June 12, 2026, by the U.S. Department of War as part of an official batch called Pursue Release 03, and is categorized by the Bureau itself as a standard witness interview form. Fact. It's one of 29 FBI-originated files inside that release, out of 72 total, alongside contributions from the CIA, NASA, and the Department of War's own historical archive. Fact. The same release contains a case from October 2023, a multi-agent sighting near a sensitive national security site in the western United States that a separate federal analysis office has publicly called among the most compelling in its entire archive, and which the government explicitly states remains unresolved as of this release. Fact. A 2022 Colorado Springs sighting of a motionless, ridged, bean-shaped object was assessed by an intelligence community partner as possibly explainable by sunlight reflecting off snow, but the government itself labeled that theory low confidence and kept the case formally open. What is not a fact? That the redactions inside D009 are concealing anything beyond a witness's identity. That remains a reasonable inference, consistent with the government's own stated redaction policy, but it stays an inference, not a proven conclusion, because the unredacted original has not been made public and likely never will be, by design. Here's why this matters past one single file. If the government's redaction standard really is protect the identity, release everything else, then transparency and privacy aren't actually fighting each other here. They're two settings on the same dial, and for what appears to be the first time in modern UAP policy, the US government has publicly committed to keeping that dial turned toward disclosure by default. That's a bigger story than one blacked-out paragraph in a 2-page form. It means the exact same standard sitting on top of D009 is the standard sitting on top of the Western US event, the Colorado Springs case, and whatever shows up in the next release, which officials have already confirmed is being prepared. Misread that standard, and you make one of two mistakes. You miss a real, documented pattern of institutional caution around private citizens' safety, or you invent a hidden conspiracy in a spot where there's actually just a privacy office doing exactly what it says it's doing. Either mistake costs you the ability to read the next file honestly. Think for a second about what it would actually feel like to be that couple standing in their own backyard in July 2025. You pull into your driveway after a normal day at work. A red light is hovering over your own tree line, less than 100 feet away. You get out of the car, you go find your spouse. The two of you are standing there together, watching something neither of you can explain, phone shaking slightly in your hand as you try to record it. Weeks later, an FBI agent is asking you to walk through it again, calmly, on a federal form, for the record. And months after that, your account, cropped, filtered, partially blacked out, becomes one small footnote inside a national release that strangers are dissecting in videos exactly like this one. That's not abstract. That's somebody's single strangest night turning into permanent, searchable government record, sitting in a folder next to Cold War intelligence cables and Apollo mission transcripts. Revelation 1, D009 exists, and it's redacted. Revelation 2, bigger, it's not alone. It's the 9th document inside an 11-file investigation the FBI ran on its own backyard for 4 straight years. Revelation 3, bigger still. 2 of the witnesses inside that same investigation weren't outside callers at all. They were the FBI's own agents. Revelation 4, the biggest of all, this file wasn't leaked, wasn't forced out by a lawsuit, wasn't extracted under pressure. It was released voluntarily, inside a program the government describes as ongoing, with a fourth release already confirmed to be in preparation while you're watching this. Each revelation changes what that redaction actually means. By the fourth one, censorship stops being the most accurate word for what happened here, and that reframe is the entire reason this investigation exists. Here's the question nobody in this conversation is actually asking. What if the story was never, what is the FBI hiding? What if the real question is, what does it take, institutionally, to get a modern federal agency to publish this much, this fast, and still hold a portion of it back on principle? Because if the honest answer really is just witness privacy, the far more urgent question flips entirely. It's not what's behind the black bars anymore. It's why it took until 2026 for releasing hundreds of these files to become the default policy, instead of the rare exception forced by decades of pressure, lawsuits, and public demand. After the timeline block, even without a single redacted line, this timeline alone would already be one of the most sustained, documented UAP clusters in the public record. After the fact-check block, but here's what's still open, because two of the cases sitting in this exact release are not closed, and the government says so itself. Right before the escalation block, hold on, because this gets bigger than the one file we started with. First twist, the viewer expects censored to mean concealed from the public entirely. It actually means released, with names removed, which is a far less dramatic and far more procedurally ordinary act than the title implies. Second twist, the viewer expects the redaction to be protecting a secret about the phenomenon itself. The government's stated rationale is about protecting a person, not a mystery. Third twist, just when the story seems to settle into, it's only privacy, nothing more here, the detail about the two agents as first-hand witnesses reopens it completely. The Bureau redacted a file connected to a case where its own personnel are the ones who reported seeing something they couldn't explain. The climax here was never a hidden truth about extraterrestrials. It's this. For nearly 4 years, one small, quiet corner of the United States generated enough unexplained lights in the night sky that the FBI didn't just interview the neighbors about it, it sent its own trained agents out to the site, and those agents reported seeing it too. That fact was investigated, documented, typed up on federal forms, filed under a case number, and then, after years of internal work, deliberately and openly handed to the public, with only the names blacked out. The government didn't bury this story, it dated it, filed it, and eventually gave it to you. The mystery was never really the redaction itself. The mystery is what 4 years of federal agents documenting lights they still can't identify actually adds up to, and that part of the case remains open. If you want to keep following this story yourself, and you should, because it is genuinely still unfolding in real time, watch for 3 specific things. First, learn to spot the difference between a case marked resolved and one explicitly marked unresolved as of a given date. Several cases sitting in this exact same release, including Colorado Springs and the Western U.S. event, are still officially open, meaning the government hasn't landed on an explanation for them either. Second, pay attention to who is doing the redacting and whether they explain why. A release that states its own redaction policy in writing is a fundamentally different animal from one that redacts silently and offers no reason at all. Third, be skeptical of any video, including one exactly like this one, that treats a redacted line as automatic proof of a cover-up without first telling you what the stated reason for that redaction actually was. The real lesson here was never about UFOs specifically. It's about how to read any government document release without lying to yourself in either direction. A blacked-out line is not automatic evidence of a hidden truth, but a government press release is not automatically the whole story either. The one skill that actually protects you on this topic, and on every other one where they're hiding something gets thrown around, is the same skill every time. Find the stated reason, check whether it holds up consistently across the entire release, and only start treating it as suspicious the moment it doesn't. So, why did the FBI censor file UAPD-009? The honest answer is that it almost certainly redacted it to protect the identity of a person who watched something they couldn't explain, standing in their own backyard, and had the nerve to report it to the federal government anyway. That part of the mystery is resolved. Here's the part that isn't. That same witness's account sits inside a 4-year federal investigation involving the Bureau's own agents as first-hand observers, connected to at least 2 other cases the US government has publicly stated remain unresolved to this day. The file answers one question cleanly and leaves a far bigger one sitting exactly where it left it, not whether the government is finally telling you everything, but whether, even after everything it just handed you, anyone actually knows what was really hovering in that backyard.